A 13-year-old boy from a Nevada boiler room who built his own laboratory from $14 worth of scavenged parts and spare wires looked at the most powerful machine in human history and said, "We are no longer where we started." Is it possible that a gifted teenager proved that CERN shifted us into a different dimension? 1. The boy from the boiler room. In 2016, 13-year-old Max Lufin became one of the internet's most discussed young minds after building a device in a converted boiler room at his parents' Nevada home that he claimed could harvest electromagnetic energy from the atmosphere, and explained the concept with the fluency of a veteran physicist. He called the device the Energy Horizon Gatherer. Max argued that Earth's atmosphere is constantly saturated with radio waves, thermal energy, and static electricity, and that converting this ambient energy from alternating current into direct current was not impossible, only an overlooked engineering challenge. But the Energy Horizon Gatherer soon became secondary to a much larger fixation: Geneva, and specifically the Large Hadron Collider, the 17-mile ring of superconducting magnets buried beneath the Franco-Swiss border. Max argued that the collider's experiments, operating at energy densities associated with moments after the Big Bang, were doing more than observing subatomic particles. According to him, they were destabilizing the foundational frequency of our timeline, and by the time the public recognized it, the damage had already been done. 2. What CERN is really doing. The Large Hadron Collider is the most complex scientific instrument ever built. Buried beneath the border of France and Switzerland, it accelerates protons to 99.99991% of the speed of light inside a ring colder than outer space. When those protons collide, the temperatures at the impact point exceed 100,000 times the temperature at the sun's core. For physicists, the LHC is a tool designed to study the fundamental structure of reality. Its primary mission was the search for the Higgs boson, the particle confirming the existence of the Higgs field, an invisible energy field believed to permeate all space and give particles their mass. Without the Higgs field, atoms could not form, and the universe as we know it would not exist. Scientists confirmed the Higgs boson in 2012, a landmark achievement in modern physics. For most people, the story ended there. Max Lufin believed it was only the beginning. He argued that the Higgs field is not just another component of the universe, but the foundational layer on which reality itself depends. In his view, the LHC was not merely measuring that layer. It was repeatedly striking it with enormous energy levels reaching into the 13 TeV range. He compared it to forcing too much electrical current through the wiring of reality. According to Max, once collisions pass a critical threshold, they no longer simply probe the Higgs field. They destabilize it. And a destabilized Higgs field would not create a visible catastrophe. Instead, it would trigger what he called a quantum slide, a silent transition in which collective human consciousness shifts into the nearest compatible parallel dimension. He described reality like a radio frequency. The universe is tuned to a specific station, and high-energy collisions inside the LHC create disturbances in spacetime capable of making that station skip. The music continues, but the channel is no longer the same. Most unsettling was his claim that this shift had already happened during the LHC's initial activation in 2008. According to Max, the original timeline was destroyed, but humanity persisted because consciousness transferred into a nearly identical parallel universe. 3. The Mandela effect was the evidence. If Max was right, then the Mandela effect was not a glitch in human memory. It was the first detectable evidence that reality itself had already changed. The Mandela effect describes the phenomenon in which large groups of unrelated people share identical memories that conflict with the current historical record. The term comes from one of the most famous examples. Millions distinctly remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison during the 1980s, even though he was released in 1990 and died in 2013. Most psychologists explain this as collective misremembering. Human memory is imperfect, shaped by suggestion, source confusion, and social reinforcement. According to mainstream science, people unconsciously merge similar ideas until false memories begin to feel certain. Max argued that this explanation would naturally emerge in a world where the physical record itself had been overwritten. His reasoning was simple. If a dimensional transition occurred, the external world would update seamlessly. Libraries, digital archives, government documents, photographs, and historical databases would all align with the history of the new dimension. The evidence trail would appear flawless. There would be no visible proof that anything had changed. The only thing capable of surviving the transition intact would be human memory. Ironically, memory is also the one thing modern science constantly teaches us not to trust. Max referred to this concept as quantum anchoring. He proposed that the human brain operates in a partially quantum state, not fully bound to local physical reality. When reality shifts, the external world rewrites itself, but the quantum structure of memory retains fragments of the previous timeline. Books change, logos change, recorded history changes, but the brain continues holding traces of the original version. Under this framework, when millions of people discover they share the same incorrect memory, they are not witnessing mass confusion. They are uncovering remnants of a world that no longer physically exists. Max described it as a form of quantum archaeology. He believed the pattern of Mandela effect examples strengthened the theory. The Berenstain Bears are remembered by millions as Berenstein. The Monopoly Man remembered with a monocle he never officially wore. Looney Tunes were called as Looney Tunes. These discrepancies tend to cluster around familiar cultural symbols rather than random facts. In Max's view, they represented tiny divergences between two nearly identical timelines. The universes are almost the same. The Mandela effect exists in the fraction where they differ. Max also connected the theory to another widespread experience, the feeling that time itself is accelerating. Many people describe years passing faster than they once did, as though the rhythm of life has subtly changed. He attributed this to what he called clock rate mismatch. According to his theory, our current dimension operates at a slightly different temporal frequency than the original one humanity occupied. Human biology, still calibrated to the previous timeline, experiences this altered cadence as constant low-level urgency and the sensation of time slipping away. He called it universal jet lag, not experienced by travelers crossing time zones, but by an entire species that crossed dimensions without realizing it. 4. Dimensional bleed and the overlap. Max Lugan did not stop with the Mandela effect. He pushed the theory further, linking particle physics to the strange psychological atmosphere of modern life in ways many people find difficult to dismiss once they consider them closely. One of his central ideas drew from the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. This is not a fringe theory, but a major framework proposed by physicist Hugh Everett in 1957 and still debated by scientists today. The interpretation suggests that every possible outcome of every quantum event exists in its own parallel universe. Every decision, particle interaction, and branching possibility unfolds across separate realities that normally never interact. Max argued that the Large Hadron Collider disrupted that separation. According to his theory, the LHC was not merely observing quantum possibilities. It was colliding with adjacent realities, producing what he called dimensional bleed. This was not a physical portal or visible rupture, but a state in which nearby timelines began overlapping at the quantum level. The boundaries between universes became porous, allowing subtle traits from neighboring realities to leak into one another. He believed this framework could explain several unresolved anomalies in modern physics. Over the past 2 decades, scientists have identified inconsistencies in measurements of supposedly fixed universal constants, including the Hubble constant, the fine structure constant, and other foundational values. Physicists typically describe these discrepancies as tensions in the data, experimental results that do not fully align with the standard model. Max interpreted them differently. He claimed they were not simple measurement errors, but interference patterns produced by overlapping timelines. From this perspective, our current reality is not the original timeline, but a replacement. The closest compatible dimension available after the shift he believed occurred during the LHC's activation. He often emphasized that if humanity had moved into a neighboring universe, the differences would not be dramatic. there would be no radically altered geography or impossible technology. The changes would be subtle, concentrated in small details that feel wrong without being easy to prove. Familiar names spelled differently, logos remembered incorrectly, historical details that millions insist were used in another way. That subtlety, Max argued, is exactly what makes the phenomenon unsettling. People experience these discrepancies, dismiss them as faulty memory, and move on because they have no framework for understanding them. Max also warned that the process was ongoing. As the Large Hadron Collider continues receiving upgrades and operating at higher collision densities, he believed each new run increased the possibility of further dimensional instability. In his view, reality is no longer fixed. Every major experiment inside the collider creates another chance for the timeline to shift again. The machine beneath Geneva is not slowing down. It is being expanded to reach greater energies and probe deeper into the structure of reality, continuing the same line of experimentation that Max Lugan began warning about from a boiler room in Nevada when he was 13 years old. 5. Why Max Lugan disappeared. By the early 2020s, public discussion around Max Lugan had shifted from controversy into something stranger: silence. The teenager who once drew millions of views with theories about fractured timelines and parallel universes had largely disappeared from public attention, and the internet quickly filled the gap with speculation. The theories were predictable: suppression, government pressure, quiet intervention from scientific institutions or media platforms. The story of the silenced genius has always been powerful in conspiracy culture, and Max fit the role perfectly. Young, highly articulate, challenging major scientific systems, and then suddenly absent. The reality appears less dramatic, but far more grounded. Max grew up. The viral 13-year-old was operating largely through intuition, pattern recognition, and self-directed learning that exceeded his formal education at the time. As he got older, he shifted toward structured scientific work rather than internet speculation. By 2026, Max Lugan is identified as an undergraduate researcher at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, working with the Plasma Edge Physics with 3D Boundaries Research Group, led by Professor Oliver Schmitz. His work focuses on plasma behavior along the edges of magnetic confinement systems, an important field for fusion energy research and high-energy particle physics. Through Lugan Labs, which he operates alongside his brother Jack, he has also explored electromagnetic harvesting and sovereign sensing technologies. In many ways, he transitioned from internet theorist to engineer. The focus shifted from asking whether CERN had damaged reality to building practical technologies grounded in physics and experimentation. That evolution matters because ideas become more influential when refined through years of research rather than viral attention. What the suppression narrative misses is that Max's disappearance from public discourse may have amplified the mythology around him. While he was actively posting videos, audiences could challenge him directly, ask questions, and engage with his arguments in real time. Once he stepped away, the theories took on a life of their own. Clips, documentaries, podcasts, and algorithm-driven discussions continued circulating his ideas without context or correction, transforming him into the myth of the suppressed teenage genius. Meanwhile, the questions he raised never fully disappeared. As Max moved away from online notoriety, the Large Hadron Collider continued expanding and upgrading, becoming more powerful and precise with every new phase of operation. The teenager who warned about the machine returned to scientific work. The machine itself never stopped running. 6. The 2026 frontier and what CERN is doing right now. This is where the story shifts from internet theory into present-day events. Depending on your perspective, what is happening at CERN is either the next great leap in particle physics or a dramatic escalation of the same type of dimensional experimentation Max Lugan warned about years ago. As of 2026, CERN has entered a new phase under Director General Mark Thomson, the British experimental physicist educated at Cambridge and Oxford. Thomson's strategy for the 2026 to 2030 period focuses on pushing physics beyond the standard model. Official research goals include investigating dark matter, hidden forces, and the possibility of extra dimensions. These are not fringe concepts. but stated objectives of the world's most powerful particle physics laboratory. CERN has described the 2026 operational schedule as short but intense. Throughout the year, protons and lead ions are being collided with record-breaking precision before the Large Hadron Collider shuts down in June 2026 for Long Shutdown 3. The shutdown will last until 2030 and represents the largest transformation in the machine's history. Engineers plan to replace roughly 1.2 kilometers of the accelerator with entirely new systems, while drilling 28 vertical cores to connect technical galleries to the underground tunnel. The purpose is to convert the collider into the high-luminosity LHC, increasing the collision rate by a factor of 10. That scale matters within Max Luffin's framework. If previous collision levels were supposedly capable of destabilizing reality or triggering dimensional shifts, then the high-luminosity upgrade represents an order of magnitude increase in the same process. The machine is not simply being repaired. It is being rebuilt to probe deeper into the structure of matter than ever before. The high-luminosity program is expected to generate approximately 380 million Higgs bosons during its operational lifetime, compared to around 55 million produced since the LHC first began operating. In conventional physics, this means vastly improved data collection about the Higgs field and particle interactions. In Max's interpretation, it represents an unprecedented saturation of reality with the so-called God particle. At the same time, CERN has identified the proposed Future Circular Collider as one of its highest priorities for the coming decades. The FCC would span 91 kilometers, more than 5 times the circumference of the current LHC, and could reach collision energies of up to 100 TeVs, nearly 7 times more powerful than the machine Max believed had already altered reality once before. CERN leadership is expected to make key decisions about the project by 2028, with construction potentially beginning in the 2030s. Another notable shift came in early 2026 when CERN accepted private donations from individuals and philanthropic organizations to help fund FCC development, marking the first major use of private capital in collider expansion. Whether viewed as revolutionary science or something far more unsettling, the pursuit of increasingly powerful particle collisions is no longer slowing down. It has become a permanent feature of modern civilization, and, within Max Luffin's theory, a permanent possibility for further shifts in reality itself.